everybody to another great episode of the Beyond Normal podcast. We have a guest today. He changed things up in the tech hiring space. He's got a company by the name of Bootup. He's a founder that goes by the name of Chandler Malone. I'm excited to have him on. He is a founder doing some great things in two great cities, the city of Tulsa and the city of Miami. So without further ado, I want to bring Chandler to the stage so we can start this great dialogue we're about to have. Thanks for coming on the platform, Chandler, and sharing your story with us, with our viewers. I'm excited to hop right into things with you. So without further ado, let folks know a little bit about your story prior to you founding Bootup. Like, tell us a little bit about Chandler and what made him take that next step to being a founder in this day and age.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll say, early in my life, basketball was kind of like the center of my life. Like I went to school, basically I picked my school because I wanted to go somewhere where I could go play ball, and feel like I had a meaningful role. And I think, like that really speaks to, a lot of just like the competitive drive, in nature and, the love of team building, that I have as a person. But I pretty quickly understood that I was not going to be playing professionally. And so started thinking just about other options. So my sophomore year in college, I had an opportunity to take a class about the societal impacts of technology, while also starting my first business and events business where, we brought Billboard top 10 artists to St. Louis for shows. And so having that successful first entrepreneurial experience, but also that exposure to the impact and scalability of tech so early in career basically made me decide, look, I've got to be a technology entrepreneur if I just want to be who Chandler can be, in this world. And, with that being said, though, I definitely knew that I didn't have the technical skills. I wasn't a business major or anything like that. I needed to get in rooms to be able to learn a little bit more and build credibility for myself, as well. And so that's when I started, just my venture capital journey. And so, interned for free for 20 hours a week, at a venture firm to start. And, eventually started working, in venture firms full time. And, even in, building this company, right? The last firm that I was at Atento Capital in Tulsa, Oklahoma, all of our portfolio companies were reaching out to me, being like, look, we can't find anyone to hire. Like, can you help us? That forced me to start doing research just on the greater talent market, and helped me to understand that there's a 2 to 5 million person talent gap in tech today that's projected to grow to 85 million people by 2030. There are not 85 million working Americans between 25 and 40, and so when I saw a problem that big, right, it's like, okay, this is something worth digging my teeth into. What's the largest pipeline of folks into tech, right? Tech is considered a white collar job, in today's society, right? And so the largest pipeline in all white collar jobs is college, right? University system is in massive decline, though. You've got university enrollment has been declining every year for the past 12 years, 3 million fewer people in college than a decade ago, right? And so you got this huge problem, and our solution to the problem is literally shrinking. And so for me, this is getting me more excited, right? Because then I'm like, okay, the less clear of a solution there is, like the bigger opportunity that there is. And so, started doing research just on some of these non-traditional, training programs, right? Boot camps, vocational training schools, et cetera. And saw that graduates of those programs were growing 50% year over year, right? And so it's like the other educational opportunities, like people are engaging with those less. These non-traditional ones are experiencing a boom. Meanwhile, these non-traditional experiences have only been around 10, 12 years, right? And so as an individual, your comfortability, your knowledge, your understanding of them, is lower. As an institution, that is hiring an enterprise, right? Like your comfortability with these types of, institutions is not as strong. And so for me, I realized if I can sit in the middle and I can understand the most about these new types of programs and help convey that information to candidates, but also help convey what's so compelling about candidates who have come out of these programs to companies and why companies should be engaging with these programs, I can sit in the middle and have the most information and create the most transparency, then I'll be able to build a really large business.
I'm curious to know what drew you to building in Tulsa. Tell us a little bit about the program you're in there and just why Tulsa in general. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, man. So I guess the first piece that I'll say is I feel like just as a Black American, there is so much history in Tulsa. As an entrepreneur, it goes even further, right? And so, Tulsa is the home of, as many know, Greenwood, the Greenwood District, the original Black Wall Street. And so a little over 100 years ago, 1921, that entire district in Tulsa, which had more Black millionaires than anywhere else, in the country at that point in time, was burned to the ground by a white mob. So looking back, right, last year was the 100-year anniversary of that, and for myself, I look at technology, as basically the highest upside, form and version of entrepreneurship. Tulsa has not, traditionally been known, as a technology hub. And so to be a Black founder that is building a really high growth $1 billion, opportunity in Tulsa, I feel like that is the strongest way to ever, possibly be able to, honor the legacy, of the folks that built the original Greenwood District, the original Black Wall Street. And to take just, kind of one step back of how I ended up there. So I was born and raised, grew up in Dallas, and went to a Black Tech Week event. The organization was owned by Derek and Felicia Hatcher. I want to give them a huge congratulations for getting it acquired by Brian and Candace Breckeen and the Lightship Capital team. That's huge to see Black founders, get acquisitions. But went to a Black Tech Weekend event in Tulsa, and just connected with a few individuals, met an individual named Michael Bosch who was launching a fund called Atento Capital. And I think for me, it gave me the best opportunity to be in a check writing, decision-making role, to be getting, as much exposure as possible earlier in my career than basically any other fund opportunity, had, presented me with. And so for me, I took that, opportunity and kind of ran with it. And, obviously, I spoke kind of as to what led to starting the company, even just the flexibility and autonomy that I had in that position and in that role, in Tulsa, which I may not have been able to have, at other funds, elsewhere, played a huge impact in even, finding the inspiration, for the company. And so, I think it's been great. And the last thing that I'll say is specifically for Black entrepreneurs, there are a number of funding sources in Tulsa that can really kind of bring you that initial angel, pre-seed type of money for you to get that proof of concept, up and working and be able to raise, a robust seed round, And so, with that being said, right, it's like there's this historical component, there's an incredible amount of opportunity, and it's a smaller community. And so because it's a smaller community, while there are, a lot of financial resources, it's a lot easier to get in contact with the individuals that you need to start developing relationships with to have access to that capital. And so, I think for an early, stage Black founder, I feel like Tulsa's, a great place for you to be able to, prove out what you're working on, get it up off the ground, and really start to, build and grow and scale.
Yeah, I love that, Chandler. Moving to Tulsa, right? You would think that's not like a destination for a lot of people, like you said, but the story, the heritage, there's cities like that all across America, outside of like that top 10 or the places that you see people going on IG. Those places are good as well, but like you said, having that connectivity. So folks, I can actually think back to college, right, where some people want to have that big college experience, but they may need a smaller college experience where they get more of that one-to-one relationship with the staff, with other students, or with their professors. And so, yeah, I really commend you on that. That is definitely a beyond normal concept, right? That we like to call it on the show, where you're not always chasing the glamorous areas to go to. You're really going for the opportunity that fits you best.
Exactly.
So that's really powerful stuff there. And now that you've gone there, you've been there in Tulsa for a while. I know you have some connections to other cities. I think Miami's the other one. Can you talk about your connections in some of these other locations, and you're still able to tap into some of those bigger pools, the bigger lakes with the bigger fishes, right? Talk a little bit about that.
Definitely. So, I mean, the cities where we've placed the most candidates into their first jobs are New York City, Austin, Atlanta, and Dallas. And so, like those are all, top 10 cities, in terms of, populations, but also those are all cities with very large tech workforces, and I think, New York is known for just being a big place where stuff's going on. I think Austin has a reputation, for a growing tech hub. But the thing that and Atlanta also, has that reputation, for being a tech hub. But people don't realize about Atlanta and Dallas. You have so many Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, enterprise companies there that are hiring for technology roles like crazy. People don't understand. Home Depot hires hundreds of software engineers per year as their business transitions to be more e-commerce than just like in-person in-store experience. And so when you start to think of all of your kind of favorite companies across any sector, their technology organization is growing. And so I guess I've been spending a lot of time personally in Miami because I think that there is a really big but also really important opportunity in Miami. A lot of folks talk about the Bay Area and they're like, oh, the Bay Area is so bad, for all these reasons. But, one of the large reasons is just the large income disparity, right? The Bay Area is the epicenter of tech, still, even if, folks do feel that it's shifting away, it still is the epicenter today. And so you've got the highest paid salaried workers in the world, all living in one place, not to mention the highest paid entrepreneurs literally in history, also in that same place. And so for your average person who's working in retail, who's working in service industry, and we need people working all of these jobs to have a functioning society, it's literally not sustainable to be able to like live in the region because prices have been driven up so much. Mm-hmm. And so, Miami in 2020 and in 2021 was the number one city in the world for tech worker migration. And so, with that being said, you see a situation coming where, rents are, going up for people, $700, $1,200, dollars a month, crazy, obscene numbers that leads to situations like what has, been created in the Bay Area. What I will commend the city of Miami on, though, is that local government has really made it a priority to ensure that local Miamians who have been born and raised and live there are getting access to the training, the resources, the infrastructure to be able to go get those tech jobs for themselves and not get priced out of the city that they grew up in. And so for us, we're connecting people with the training resources and then the jobs. And so, we can actually help the city of Miami, in some of its, goals to make the city continue to be sustainable, and livable, for folks, while also developing relationships with companies in a city where they're moving to, faster than basically anywhere else. So.
Yeah, that's dope, man. I always tell people to consider the gas prices. You move to some of these bigger cities, you move out west, you gotta be comfortable potentially paying $7, $8, $9, maybe $10 for gas. That is not something I want to do. Okay.
Oh, and those West Coast cities are spread out too. So not only do you have to pay a lot, you're gonna be driving a lot anyway.
So I'll be like, let me go ahead and stay in sunny North Carolina. Obviously, there's pros and cons, right? To everything. You may not get as big of a city feel if you like to be out and about with people. But there's definitely benefits to moving to other places. And that Miami is a particular one, like you said, where you could see in 10 years, like the growth is going to be insane. But then it sounds like there's a little bit of focus. There's some focus by the leadership there to make sure that the ones who were born and raised there actually get to take part. That's really big. That's going to be huge. We've had a couple founders, as you know, and our viewers know, from Miami on, and that's a nice spot to be right now if you're a Black Latin founder.
And I want to speak to that piece as well. I would say specifically, within Black founders in Miami, the level that has been reached is obviously incredible and awe-inspiring, but it's not the highest level that can be reached. And so it really feels like it is wide open for Black founders, that move to Miami, because, you've got folks who are doing it, but no one who has really just done it all the way yet. And so I think that provides an increased opportunity for visibility. Whereas you go to the Bay Area, folks are like, who are you if you haven't had, an 8-figure plus exit, and that is not the energy in Miami. And I'll say, I talked about the connectivity in Tulsa. Miami is a much larger ecosystem than Tulsa. But I will say that in a lot of ways, that connectivity that I was exposed to in Tulsa, that was just so important for being able to make things happen quickly. I felt that in Miami, and experiencing that in Tulsa made me realize how important that is to be able to unlock some of these growth hacks where it's not just us putting in the work, but we've got some folks looking out for us, who can amplify what we're doing, whether it's with their voice, or with capital or, whatever the case may be.
Got it. Nah, that's huge, man. That's really huge. You finding your tribe in multiple places. These devices we all have now should make things a little bit easier for you to find that tribe. And when you find it, like it seems like you're being real intentional, and you're all in on that. You're in the moment there.
Yep.
And so I'm sure that's a sign of greater things to come. Even on top of that 8 million that you're out there raising now, I got to throw that number out there again. Congrats to you on that. But yeah, definitely appreciate you calling out Tulsa and Miami.
Yeah, definitely. And I do want to call out some of the community members in Miami just because I know they would do the same thing. So just definitely want to give a huge shout out to AJ Yon, the founder of Bite Check, has been a great friend, great mentor, working on a company, in a similar space. Also want to give a big shout out to Ariana the Techie, one of the only Black women building companies in, the Web3, metaverse space. And she is doing it like at a very high level. Also want to give, a big shout out to Ted Lucas, who's an entrepreneur, but also, serving as an angel investor, in the community and being able to get, those checks in before, the institutions, get involved. That stuff is super important. And that's like a lot of times for founders of color, the hardest checks to get. And so I want to, definitely give, Ted a big shout out. And then also want to give, Janine Sua a big shout out as well. I feel like she's just been a great connector. She's introduced me to customers, introduced me to investors, and I know she's done that, for so many other people. And so I want to call out the people in the tribe to recognize them, but also I think even just for the viewers, right? It's some people who are going through the same journey that I'm at, and we're basically in the same phase. Some people who are adjacent and can be helpful with introductions. Some people who are adjacent who have done it and had success as an entrepreneur and now can be more partners on that capital side. And so that tribe, it's a couple different people that like all speak and touch to different things that, we need and I need to grow. So
yeah, people have different strengths, man. And so relying on each other's strengths is definitely huge when you have your tribe. I'm curious, you touched on something there around kind of having those, seems like Ted is really involved in putting those checks in early, giving businesses, giving founders that initial push that they need from a capital perspective. So I'm curious, like, what was that first investor check for you like? Like, how much was it roughly? You don't have to get into the exact numbers, but what was that? What was the size of that, and what did it do for you?
Yeah, so the very first check that we got was for $25,000. And so actually, I want to take a step back even before that. The very first check in the company was a check that I personally wrote. I'm not a software engineer. And so to basically like just get an initial product up, to even show people, to get the first checks, like I had to make an investment myself. And, for everyone, that doesn't have to be a capital investment, right? That can be a time investment. That can be a talent and skills investment. But like, no one in their right mind is going to invest in you before you invest in yourself. Like, that's just like the way that like the world works, And so like, I put in a $20,000 investment, into basically just getting this initial, product up. Our first outside investment came in for $25,000. And I want to give a huge shout out to Jim Milloway. He's the founder of Zero Card. It's a health tech company based here out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so Jim, right, had already raised his Series A. I'm talking to my first angel investors. And so, I think with Jim was looking, to invest in just individuals, right, who he believed in. But also it was like, you've been 2 steps past where I am currently at. So we can catch up, once every couple of weeks. And like the advice and feedback that you can give me is like elite level because you were just there literally a year, 2 years ago. And so, after we got that first check from Jim, and this is also something that I would say, do not discount people who write small checks, right? That $25K check from Jim introduced us to a $50K check. Jim introduced us to a $75K check. Jim introduced us to a $125K check, right? And so while he only wrote 25 for us, we ended up getting 200, like off of that relationship. And so I definitely want to tell founders that, look, the smaller check sizes sometimes, especially from other founders, those are the people who understand intimately, and like they will help you because they get it. And so, that really, kind of was what got us off the ground. Once we were able to go raise that angel money, the fund that I was working for at Tinto Capital, they were like, at that point, like, look, you did good work for us. We know what your track record, what your work ethic is like. There have been other people who we believe in who have taken a bet on you. At this point, we basically like we have to take the bet on you now. And so that's the other thing that I will talk to founders about in the fundraising process. Leverage matters so much, because you got to think there's a million people who want to go build billion-dollar companies, whether they have a problem that they're passionate about or whether they just want to go make $1 billion, right? And so these investors are going to be seeing a lot of companies, and the companies are so early on that it's hard to differentiate sometimes when there's no traction between, do I want to invest in this person or this person? But if you're able to create a situation where you've put the pressure on them a little bit, and so you can do that in two ways, right? One way is what was mentioned earlier, right? If you say, tell me what you want to see, and then, I gave you what you wanted to see. That's one way of creating pressure. Another way of creating pressure is being like, look, here's what we're doing. Here's our timeline. Here are all the other people who have already committed. And so we're going to make this happen according to the timeline, whether or not you're involved, and so that basically forces or compels, any investor that has even a remote level of interest to then like have to dive deeper and like be fully earnest with you. So.
Oh, that's dope, man. Like you giving up gems. I feel like this is a playbook. So somebody could literally just listen to this episode, write down these plays, and they'll have a real John Madden level, all team, all pro, whatever that highest level is. They'll have that right playbook for them to execute moving forward. So you dropping gems. I appreciate it, Chandler.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
So, as we get towards the end of the conversation, like how can folks stay in tune with the Bootup brand? You've shared a lot here, but I know that there's more you can share just for folks following the journey of the company. So tell folks a little bit how they can stay connected, and maybe even leverage the services if they're trying to get into tech.
Yeah, definitely. So, first piece that I'll say is our website is www.joinbootup.com. And so if you don't have any tech skills, but you're just remotely interested in getting into tech, feel free to check out the website, poke around. We'll show you various training programs, the length of time that it takes, the cost, the average salary that folks are getting, from those programs, et cetera, to help you just be able to understand more if it's a route that you even want to go down. But also, for folks who do have the training, right? We've got relationships with over 80 employers. We never have under 100 job opportunities from partner employers live on the platform. And so you're looking for that first job in tech. We've got a number of folks who are looking to onboard people who are getting that first job in tech, and so, definitely recommend, folks engaging with us that way. In terms of updates on Instagram and Twitter, our app profile is at Join Bootup. And then on LinkedIn, you can just search us at Bootup. And then, feel free to follow my personal accounts as well as Chandler Malone. I like to share, kind of monthly just updates on, our performance, on our numbers and statistics, and also try to open source, some of, the information that I'm putting out there, whether it be to customers or investors, just to be able to get feedback, and to share, with others, who are kind of like looking to learn from folks who are maybe a step, further in the journey as well.
Hope everybody had their notes out. Obviously, this is going to be on all social media, DSPs and all that stuff. So you can hit the rewind button as much as you can, but definitely make sure you tap in with what Chandler's got going on. Plenty, as you can see, just the story that he's sharing. Plenty going on and plenty to come. So I'm excited to hear more about that. Like you said, Chandler, we're going to figure out how we can have you back on. So we can see how that world domination, that 8 million that you're raising now, and the countless others that are going to leverage your platform to get into tech, see how that's going for you.
Yeah, most definitely.
So last time I want to pass it to you as we close out. Like what is that final thought you want folks to take away from this conversation? They've been listening with us. They've been tuning in, taking notes. vibing with the story. But what's that last takeaway from this conversation for those listening in? What do you want them to keep top of mind?
Yeah. So I'll say I think what I want to share is for both other founders, but also folks who are looking to make that, jump and like break into technology for the first time. The most difficult thing for me in this journey has been viewing myself and viewing our business like in the moment and in the present, right? Because, we're working so hard, things are moving so quickly, things are changing so fast that it's easy to get caught up in viewing yourself as the person, as the company, as the entity that you were 2 months ago, instead of the one that you are today and the one that you aspire to be, 3 months down the road. And so, I think as founders, right, you walk into a situation where you're like, oh, I don't have a product yet. I don't feel comfortable asking for a couple $1 million, but at the end of the day, it's like, look, this is a different world. This is a different space. So you've been having, something, right, that makes you compelling. Then you need to go walk into that room fully confident in who you are today, even if it seems like yesterday that person was not in a position to be asking for what you're asking for today. And I think the same thing, applies for folks who are looking to break into tech, right? You might come in with very little baseline knowledge, and you might leave out, of whatever training program, whether it's a 2-month program or a 6-month program. You're going to leave out with so much more information that than you had previously. But you're going to look at people with 10 years of experience and feel like, oh man, I still don't have a year of experience. But that growth that you have had in those 6 months, like the person that you are once you have finished that is a person who is ready to go step into a company, who's ready to come in and contribute, who's ready to come in and build a high growth career for themselves. And so really that last piece that I would say is just, encouraging people to stay in the present, even as life is changing fast, even as their situation is changing fast. Embrace that change and see yourself as that person that you're changing and growing into, and resist, that temptation to, just kind of lean into, the comfort of maybe who you were or what you were working on or what your organization was in the past.
Bars. I'm going to just let that one marinate for folks. A lot to think about. Appreciate you coming on the platform, Chandler, and sharing your story. And thanks for the listeners for tuning in to another great episode of Beyond Normal Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Kenny.